not to make that observation. You know, I've been here, it's now 29 years. My anniversary is December 3rd. That's the day that I enrolled with Melaleuca back in 1991. So this is now my 29th year with Melaleuca. And after 29 years, you know, you get a few extra wrinkles on your face and a bag or two under your eyes and a couple of fewer hairs on your head. But what's really interesting is that we're all, yeah, right, Mark, we're all here together. And that's one of the outcomes of the Melaleuca business that I never really saw when I first got started. So, you know, I started my Melaleuca business really out of a need for survival more than anything else. And I'll get to that, but let me start from the very beginning, because I guess my influence to get into a home-based business was my upbringing, and my real influence, my direction, if you will, my true north, if you will, was to find a business that I could work from home and I could be around my kids as they were growing up. Now that's kind of bizarre, because in the world that we live in today, a lot of people are doing that. But I think it wasn't necessarily to be in a business where the environment was my dwelling place, my living place, my sleeping place. I think really, if I could redefine it today, the whole reason why I got involved with this type of business was to have control over my life and not have someone or something tell me what to do, when to do it, where to be, how long to be there, and when I couldn't see my children. And so the reason why that was my true north in getting involved with this kind of business, it goes back to my childhood. Now, I was the oldest of 5 kids, and my parents had a construction company in Southern Florida. And my parents, it was just the typical way that a household was run. My dad would be out of the house by 6 o'clock in the morning. He wouldn't get home until 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock at night. He was out building houses, and my mom was taking care of 5 kids. And, you know, when you're a young kid, you know, 5, 6, 7, what do you really know about life? But when you get into your teen years, you start to see things a lot differently. And what I realized then was that my dad had to be on the job site all the time in order to make the money for the household. And it was incredibly stressful, and we missed our dad, and my mom certainly was stressed out. And, you know, from a very early on age, I wanted to have a business that I could be in control, not have my business control me. And so interestingly enough, in sophomore year of high school, there was a meeting there's a general assembly that I was asked to go to. And it was my very first multi-level marketing meeting. And there was a kid that graduated our high school. He was in his mid-20s, and he came. I don't know how he got this approved by the school, but he came and he did a presentation to about 100 of us in an assembly room, and it was an Herbalife presentation. So this is about 1985, 1986. This was just when Herbalife, a couple years after Herbalife had gotten started and before their major lawsuit. And I actually got kicked out of the meeting because the guy was telling everybody how much money he was making, and the concept didn't make very much sense to me, because he said, I don't have a boss. I could do whatever I want to do. And I said, well, if they're paying you all this money, then you do have a boss. I got kicked out of the meeting. And a couple of years later, I had graduated high school, which was a big surprise to everybody in my family, because the last year of high school, I literally skipped the last half of school. There were 9 weeks that I just didn't go to school at all. And I had already got accepted to college, to Brandeis University in Massachusetts. And I always make a joke. I had no idea why I was going. I knew that my mom wanted me to be a doctor. My dad wanted me to be an attorney. And so somehow or another, I got accepted to school, but I missed 9 weeks of high school. And my principal pulled me in to his office, and he just shook his head. He said, you know, I have no idea what's wrong with you. Now, to be fair, part of the backstory of why I wasn't in school, my sister, who is 11 months younger than me, she had leukemia. She was diagnosed when she was 5, and she had leukemia for 17 years. So she passed away about a year after I got started with my Melaleuca business. And, you know, I was just going through some stuff, and I didn't go to school. And my principal just He shook his head. He said, you know, he said, I should fire you. I should make you go back and redo the 12th grade all over again. He said, but I'm kind of afraid. I have no idea what your mental state is. If I make you redo the 12th grade again, I'm kind of worried that you might commit suicide or something. He said, I think you could be one of the greatest CEOs of one of the greatest companies on the planet one day. He said, but I don't know what you're going to say. Anyway, so he let me pass. I didn't have to do 12th grade all over again. And it was during that summer that I answered an ad in the Palm Beach Post. I was going to go to Brandeis to become a doctor or an attorney. That's what my parents wanted me to do. But I answered this ad in the Palm Beach Post, and the Palm Beach Post ad said, earn $10,000 a month, drive a Mercedes, and wear tailored clothes. And so I thought that was pretty cool. Answered the ad, left a message on an answering machine. And a few hours later, my mom answered and yelled for me. And I ran upstairs. We had two phones in the house. One was downstairs in the kitchen, and the other one was upstairs in my parents' room. And so that's where my mom handed me the phone. And she ran downstairs after I started to talk to the guy. And I said, well, what's this all about? He says, you know, if you're interested, come to my house tomorrow night at 7:00. I said, yeah, sure. I'll be there for $10,000 a month. Yeah, no problem. What's your address? I wrote everything down. And then I asked him what I thought was a logical question. I said, well, what is this all about? Like, what's the business? And he said, well, I'm not going to tell you. If you really want to know, come to my house tomorrow night at 7:00. And so he hung the phone up on me. Now, if you ever saw the movie Scarface, this was 1988, and Scarface had just come out in the movie theaters a few years earlier. And I grew up in Southern Florida. Everything about that movie, I grew up kind of knowing about, not as graphically as they depicted it in the movie, but we certainly knew the crime wave. The Cubans came over and Castro opened up his jails, and we had big crime problems, and there was drug problems. And so I get down to the bottom of the stairs. My mom asked me what had happened. I told her, and she said, well, you're not going, are you? I said, yeah, Mom, of course I'm going to go. If I can make $10,000 a month and drive a Mercedes and wear tailored clothes, I'm going to go check this out. And she said, well, you're old enough, I can't tell you not to go. She said, do me a favor. I said, what? She says, if he offers you any drugs, just refuse them. And that was really on the forefront of our minds. I thought I was going to a drug deal. She thought I was going to a drug deal. And I didn't sleep very well that night. The following day, I got to this guy's house a half an hour early, because that's what you're supposed to do for a job interview, right? So I get there half an hour early. And then I got really scared because it was like this guy's house was the perfect stereotypic scene of what you would see on Miami Vice. I mean, this beautiful house and palm trees in the front of the house. And he had a white marble driveway and two Mercedes on the white marble driveway. And so I sat there and my imagination got the best of me for half an hour. And finally at 7:00, 5 to 7, I walked up to the door scared out of my mind. And I pressed the doorbell, and 2 or 3 doorbell rings later, the doorbell slowly creaks open. And right in front of me, I had to kind of, readjust my eyes and look down, because in front of me was this really short Cuban man with no hair on his head. And his shirt was unbuttoned all the way down to the bottom. And he had this big gold medallion glaring at me from this big black hairy chest. And so I got really scared. I figured I met the kingpin of drugs of Southern Florida. And he invites me inside. He saw that I was nervous. And the first thing he asked was, would you like to have a drink? And so I really thought I was done for. And but that was my second multi-level marketing meeting. And his name was Dr. Modesto Ordoki, and he was a Cuban. He came over here to the United States of America, got a degree here, became an internist, and he was really successful. He actually owned 5 clinics or offices. I thought he said clinics, but he had 5 locations at that time. And so he started his pitch, and his pitch was, I got 5 clinics, but I can't live without my beeper. I can make $250,000 a year if I work every day of the year, but I go to bed with my beeper and I have no control over my life. And so it kind of sounded the same way that my dad's life, my parents' life was with the construction business, because even though my dad owned his own business, he was still a slave to the environment. He was a slave to high interest rates. He was a slave to the economy. He was a slave to his employees. He actually had a secretary that embezzled $500,000 from his company a few years earlier. And that was 1983. So $500,000 in today's money is, I don't know, $20 million. It was everything and more that my parents had. And for 3 years, he fought litigation with this lady who stole the money, and she walked away free and clear. So, when you own your own business, you're not necessarily a free person. You're still a slave to so many forces that are outside of your control. And so then he pitched me. So this doctor was pitching me on the Nu Skin business. And everybody in the room, there's about 7 other people who showed up that day who answered the ad. And everybody kept asking, well, is this like Amway? Is this like Amway? And I had never heard of Amway. I had no idea what Amway was, but apparently Amway was a big thing that people did not want to be a part of. And so it cost $250 to join. I joined on the spot. And a few months later, I moved up to Massachusetts, and I started building my Nu Skin business 2 hours a day, 5 days a week while I was in college. And I think that's, one of the things that my parents taught me is that if you're going to do something, do it. And even though I was in school full time, I was very consistent with my Nu Skin business. And I had enough time to do 2 meetings a day. And that was pretty much all that I could do, 5 days a week. And within 6 months, I was making $2,000 a month. Now, remember, this is 1989, $2,000 a month I was 19 years old, just shy of 19, was a lot of money. I quit college. I finished that first semester with a B average, which I was pretty proud of. And then I quit college, and I really ramped up. I put my full-time effort into my Nu Skin business. Now, back then, in order to build, you had to have in-person meetings, period, end of sentence. There was, you didn't have this type of technology. We didn't even have fax machines back when I was doing that. And so being that I had left Brandeis, I needed a meeting location. And my friend Scott Daspin was going to Boston University, the School of Management, 345 Commonwealth Avenue, if anybody knows the city at all. That was 30 miles away from where I was living in Waltham, Massachusetts. And he said, well, they have summer school, and we could just use some of their meeting rooms. I said, well, what's the cost? He said, there's no cost. So on the top floor of the School of Management, there's a meeting room, and we would just meet there. And that's where we had our meetings. Nobody knew we were there until one day someone found out that we were doing meetings there. And in the middle of a Nu Skin presentation, we had about 30 people who all answered ads. They came and they kicked us out. And but by that time, I was making about $20,000 a month with Nu Skin. And I thought I was set. I thought that I would never have to build a business ever again. And then, of course, Nu Skin was a multi-level marketing company, still is, very similar to the Amway business. And in 1991, the attorneys general in the United States banded together and they sued Nu Skin. And as fast as my business was built, that's as quick as my business fell apart. And it was a very challenging time. It's interesting because when I started building my Nu Skin business, it was a challenging time in my life. It was also a challenging time in the world. It was the beginning of another downturn in the real estate market. When Nu Skin fell apart, it was also a challenging time in my personal life. My sister had taken a turn for the worse. My second daughter my second daughter is about to be born, and their mom and I were going through a hell of a time. And it was a recession. This was the summer of 1991, if anybody remembers that. And it was the worst recession on record since the Great Depression. I remember that like it was yesterday. I remember technology companies all around the 128 Loop in Boston, Massachusetts were all going out of business. Raytheon was one of those companies that people never thought was going to survive. The Bank of New England, which was a 170-year institution, that had closed their doors. And I was still 20, and there were people who were in my Nu Skin business who were in their 40s or 50s, and they would tell me stories of how they were up late at night wondering what their future would look like because they had lost everything. And I didn't really understand. I was too young to really comprehend what that meant. I even though I made a lot of money in Nu Skin, I made about $750,000 in 2.5 years. I didn't buy a house. I didn't know what a mortgage was like. I didn't know what having to pay for a mortgage was like. I had one daughter, so I knew what responsibility was, but I couldn't quite wrap my head around someone who had spent their entire life And because of the economic conditions around them, they had lost everything. It was a really sad time. And I had no idea of what I was going to do. As I saw my Nu Skin business fall apart, it wasn't just my income that was disappearing. It was the income of all the people who were in my Nu Skin business. Now, quite frankly, that wasn't a lot of folks. I had 7,500 people in my Nu Skin business, but nobody made any money. Nobody. I mean, I had a couple of people that were making $4,000 or $5,000 a month, and then the whole thing fell apart because of massive attrition. And when people come to me today and they tell me how great their MLM business is, I know what an MLM business is because I've been through it, and I know that they're full of it. And so, I have to be really careful about my emotional response when they pitch me how great their MLM business is. And I asked them a couple of questions to try to get to the bottom line, like, how much did you make last month? How much were your last 6 months worth of checks? How much are the people making who are in your business, and those types of things? And almost always they don't answer. And almost always in 6 months, they're in something else, trying to think that they're going to have a better future with the same type of business model. And we've all been around long enough. We know that that just doesn't happen. I still wanted to have a business that I was in control of. And I started a fish breeding business in my basement in Massachusetts. I started breeding angelfish, thinking that that would be a great next venture for me. But at the same time, I still looked around for other businesses and probably looked at close to 100 different businesses before Larry Shea called me about Melaleuca. And it's interesting, the reality is the first time that Larry called me about Melaleuca, I blew him off. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. Melaleuca, I had already heard of Melaleuca, and I had heard that it was a binary, and I had heard that you couldn't make any money, and I had heard that they had laundry detergent, and who wants to be involved with laundry detergent. I had all these preconceived notions about what Melaleuca was, and to Larry's credit, Larry kept on following up with me, and then the truth is, I only got together with him because I had nothing to do the following day and I needed lunch, and he offered to buy me lunch at his sushi restaurant. And I went and I sat down with him, and what he showed me blew me away. It wasn't a fancy presentation. It was a copy of Sheila Shumway's business report. And she had been in Melaleuca for a few years, 2-3 years, and she was making $7,000 a month, which was amazing to me because she was doing that part-time. And what was amazing to me was that she had this reorder rate. And now keep in mind, my Nu Skin business was going through massive attrition, falling apart. My highest check in Nu Skin was $22,500. My checks now are $7,500, and the attrition was still kicking in. And I had looked at my Nu Skin. I went home that day and I looked at my Nu Skin report, and I looked at all these people and nobody ordering. And I said to myself, if these people would just order the products, if they would just buy the products, I wouldn't be in such a bad bind. And here Larry was showing me a company where everyone was buying the product. So I immediately got it. It made total sense. Of course, I spent a lot of time researching the company, another 3 months before I joined. And this was the best decision that I ever made. This has become that kind of business that you can have total control over your life. And, it's interesting. We live in a world today where there are tough times. There's tough times. A lot of people today are saying this is the worst recession in many ways that we've ever had. I've heard that before many times. You guys, I'm sure, have heard that before many times. In 2008, 2009, 2010, it was the worst recession on record, and blah, 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 blah. And it's hard. It's painful. It's tough for a lot of folks out there, but not for people who built a Melaleuca business. I don't know if you guys all heard the big news that Frank announced 2 days ago, but here's a guy, he's a multi-billionaire. He doesn't have to do what he does. He's in his early 70s. And everywhere we go, this guy just makes the world a better place. So this time last year, Mark and I and some of our friends, we were just in Hawaii, and we'd won Fast Track, and we were there. We had a great time, and we were on 4x4s, and we were in Frank's forest, and we were on his big plantation. And then we spent a great 4 or 5 days on the other side of Kauai. We just had a blast. We had no idea that COVID was coming and how badly it would change our life. But while we were there last year, there is this story that we heard of the oldest ranch in Kauai that was going out of business, and Frank, just bought the ranch so the Cowboys would have their job. And we hear that we weren't shocked. We were, proud to be a part of Melaleuca because of what Frank did. We've heard those kinds of stories many times over the past 20 years and 29 years. And here a couple of days ago, Frank gets on a live Zoom and he lets us all know that they just purchased a 508,000 square foot distribution center in the middle of the United States of America, an ex-Harley-Davidson manufacturing plant that went out of business during COVID, and Frank picked it up so he could better serve the United States and Canada. Basically, what he said was that distribution center, once it's up and running, is going to get all of our customers their products within 2 days guaranteed, once it's up, which is like mind-blowing. What's even more mind-blowing than that is that he bought it in cash. What's even more mind-blowing than that is that it's 5 times the size of the Idaho manufacturing site. And for those of us that have been here long enough to remember when they purchased that site, or when they purchased the land to build on that site was like, 5 times larger than the original manufacturing site that we had. And now he's purchased something that makes that look like child's play. So I guess my point about having this kind of business where you can have such control over your life is not just the fact that we have these great products and we have this great compensation plan, but at the end of the day, I guess I work for a guy. His name is Frank Vandersloot, and I'm lucky enough, we're all lucky enough, that he's a guy that really cares about us, because he could have sold this company many years ago. He could sell it, today. He could sell this company 5 times earnings, so if we do $3 billion this year, he could sell it for $15 billion, put half that in his pocket, maybe a little bit more, and be set for the rest of his life. But he said this time and time and time again. He's proven it time and time again. He's not going to sell the company. He cares about us. So, I never really have any fear or worry about the future of what this company looks like, or our ability to make money from our company. Because we manufacture laundry detergent, and that's what people need, because we have great products at reasonable prices, because we have a great management team who continuously invests in our future, and because really today we have such a greater opportunity than we ever did before. I don't mean to turn this into an opportunity presentation, but from where I sit, we have a better compensation plan than we ever did, and that's being proven by incomes that are generated today. We have people who just got started with us 2-3 years ago. They're earning far more money, and they're mostly part-timers. They're earning far more money than any part-timer ever did who started with us 2-3 years ago. But you take a look at some of these full-time animals that are coming into the business, and I only say that because they're such workhorses. I mean, I was the first guy to make $1 million a year with our company. That was 1999 when I did it, 9 years after I got started full time. And we now have people who are getting there in their first year. Granted, every one of those folks has come from an MLM company. Every one of those folks is working their guts out. But how many people have we brought in from MLM companies who worked their guts out prior to this great enhancement to the compensation plan 3 years ago, who never got to that point? So, if you can create relationships with some MLMers who have that type of mindset, who can really see the difference, who maybe have some people they can bring over, well, you can certainly have them experience those types of results. And of course, that impacts your business. But take that away for a second and look at the world that we live in today. Is sadly a great opportunity for us. I just read this morning that the United Kingdom is in total lockdown now because apparently, quite honestly, I don't believe a damn thing that I hear anymore. I don't believe a damn thing I read anymore. But what the news media is now saying is that there's a new strain of COVID, and they've locked down the entire country of the United Kingdom. Most parts of the United Kingdom. California is under almost a complete lockdown. You guys in Canada, I understand, are under some pretty strict requirements. And what that means is that everybody's stuck at home. So if you want to earn an income, what are your options? Well, if you're in an essential business, I guess you're okay. But if you're a non-essential worker, which I think is the most disgusting label you could ever put on a human being, you're kind of screwed. We see it here in Las Vegas. 285,000 people are unemployed. 285. To give you a little bit of a comparison, back in the financial crisis, there was something like 10,000 people that were unemployed because of the financial crisis. Today, it's more like 285,000 people. And with the governor's orders from various different states, this just gets worse in time, because a lot of these small business owners, they keep reinvesting into their business to try to make their businesses somewhat openable. And then, even still, they just keep shutting down. And so you have, I think the latest number is over 100,000 restaurants in the United States of America have permanently shut their doors. A 21 Club in New York City, which has been an institution for the past 250 years, gone, shut their doors. They can't survive. They can't stay open. So how are people going to make ends meet? All roads lead to Melaleuca. I really do believe that. I really do believe that. Whether you know someone who's an MLMer, you definitely know someone in your local community who's been sadly impacted by what we live. And they might not have been the world that we live in, and they might not have been interested in mail order laundry detergent company, made in America, door delivered laundry detergent, better, safer, non-toxic products. They might not have been interested in that a year ago. But a lot of those people certainly are interested in it today. So I think we have far better opportunities. I think we're probably closer to the end of this than the beginning of this. I hope that we are. I think that they're calling for the fourth quarter here in the United States to be 11% growth, and next year in the entire world, I think it's 4.9% growth for the entire world. Hopefully that's true. But even if that is true and we get back to some sense of normalcy, I don't think there's a single person who will ever forget that they've been labeled non-essential. And I think that there will be far more people who will be looking for this kind of business where they can work from home and be in control of their future so they can enjoy a great life. That's the exact same premise that I got started with over 31 years ago. My first dip in MLM totally missed the mark, but my dip into consumer direct marketing with Melaleuca, best decision that I ever made. The MLM, I'll tell you this, the MLM world, by the way, is not thriving the way we are. They're falling apart. World Ventures, out of business. They're done. Jeunesse, they're probably also done. Isagenix, very close to being done. Eric Worre lives right across the street from me, so I get to see all these big gurus that drive up all the time, and he just finished a deal where he charged people, I think it was that's what I heard, $5,900 to come to a 3-day event at his house, and you're able to sleep over one night, and you're able to get breakfast in the morning, one morning, $5,900 for the weekend. That's how these MLMers are trying to survive. They're not surviving because their businesses are thriving, but they're doing weekend seminars and stuff like that. Contrast to what we've got going on. Our Melaleuca's had the best year ever this year. It's just an amazing situation. So, and I'll turn the time, but I'm happy to take questions or whatever you need. But Mark asked me how much I've earned here, and that's an exciting number. Never thought that I'd make that kind of money. But here's the thing that's most exciting. So if you were to ask me how much my people earn, so they started tracking this about a year ago, 15 months ago. So 15 months ago, my personal enrollees at that point, Standing LLC 2019, was $18 million. I'm sorry, $31 million. And as of last month's report, it's $52,830,000. So that's an increase of over $18 million in 14 month period of time that my personal enrollees have earned. And if you just think about that for a second, that's the thing that's staggering to me, is how well my personal enrollees have thrived. And that means their businesses have thrived. And you want to talk about being in a business where you can have an impact on other folks. This is the business. Now, sometimes I lose sight of that, quite candidly, because this business can be a grind. I mean, it really can be a grind. I got to go find some customers. Hey, if I enroll 2 customers, I get a towel. You know how many towels I have in my house? You know how many freaking glasses I have in my house, and coffee mugs I have in my house, and coffee makers I have in my house? I mean, holy cow. Sometimes it can be a grind. And I still get the same exact objections that I heard at that first MLM meeting that I was at Dr. Odoki's house back in 1988. Is this Amway? Is this Amway? And how do you do 35 points? I mean, that's the thing that drives me freaking nuts more than anything else. Because when I got started, we had 40 freaking products. They all looked the same. They all smelled the same. They probably all worked the same. Frank was probably just making 2 great products work great off of 40 different bottles. That's just a joke. But today we got 500 of the greatest products on the planet. And, you know, with COVID, a couple of weeks ago, I asked Mark, he helped me increase my vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc. I mean, holy crap. I'm taking four activates a day and 3 of the D3s a day and making sure I get enough zinc every day. I mean, it's impossible not to do 35 points, but I hear it all the time. And it sometimes it really grinds my gears. And, you know, so I always have to bring myself back to that place where I have to kind of take away from the daily grind, the mechanics of building the business, and look at the big picture, the outcome that we've been able to have for so many people. I mean, there's a lot of people who are on this. I remember when you guys got started and how much your lives have totally changed and how much better your lives have become because of our business. So that's my favorite number. My favorite number is how much my personal enrollees have earned, and to see them, at least in a numerical form, every month when I get my business report, how well that they've thrived. So,
Alan, remember at that meeting that you're alluding to on that standing ELC, they also gave us a number, and I don't remember what the number was, but they took a look at Alan's business and they looked at every leader in Alan's business that falls somewhere below him, even way below his 7 generations, but anyone that's, you know, become a leader in Melaleuca in it. And, you know, I don't know what percentage of the company they could say falls below you, but what was that number, the income that's been generated by the people that are below you?
He said Frank said 3 to 4 billion. And that was, you know, that was 14 months ago. So
3 to 4 billion, somewhere over 3 to 4 billion dollars. So, you know, the company's paid out 6.1 billion. So
yeah, well, back then it was like 5.3, right? Something like that. So
might have been 60%.
Yeah.
So think about that. Think about the decision you made in 1991 and the families' lives that have been impacted by that. It's pretty amazing, pretty ominous when you think about it.
Yeah, you know, I don't think none of us ever could have thought. I don't think Frank really thought that this was going to turn into what it did. I know he didn't, because I was with Frank when we did our first billion. That was the first Sheridan Ranch contest that I run, and we were on horses. And he's like, I need to tell you something. I said, okay. He's like, you know how Frank does this, you know, little humble farmer thing. He rolls his head and he's like, oh shoot, you know, that kind of thing. He said, I think we're going to do $1 billion this year. I said, really? I said, that's pretty amazing. He said, yeah, I never thought. He said, that's a big number to me. I never thought we'd do it, but I'm really proud that we did. And then, of course, you know, here we are, and the rate in which the company continues to grow is astronomical. You know, the length of time it took him to get to his first $500 million. What was that, like 15 years, Mark? And so, and then the actual rate of the increase, of course, is much harder to increase as you go through the billions in terms of percentage, but he's doing it so much, the company's doing it so much faster and so much quicker now than ever before. And I think in a large part that has to do with the world that we live in, but I also think in a large part that has to do with the fact that people are so much more health conscious than ever before. I mean, listen, when I was a kid, my parents would send me to school with like 2 corned beef and pastrami on rye sandwiches and a bag of Fritos and a Coke. And that's, you know, we ate meat 6 nights a week. I mean, we're Jewish, so we had all the crap you could possibly imagine. If you know what kishka is, and so, you know, like my parents' relatives, they all died in their 50s. as young people, and here we all are, and all of us are far more health conscious. All of us want to live longer, and not only do we have the awareness about it, but in terms of technology, it's in the products that we have. So the world is changing, and I think that's part of the reason why we have such a great, I know it's a part of the reason why I have such a great, MLM companies aren't thriving and surviving because they've got magic coffee or they've got a magic juice or any of that kind of stuff. We're thriving because we actually have great products at reasonable prices that people actually need, and it makes sense and it fits into their lifestyles. So
true.
Yeah.
True. Well, and what amazes me, like you said about Frank and making that investment, he, even with all that's going on in the world today, he saw the opportunity to make that investment and buy that distribution facility, or buy that facility for being able to create a distribution facility, and seeing the opportunity. And that to me is the opportunity that we can share with others, right? So pretty cool. Alan and I were on the phone with Frank the other night. He didn't tell us he was going to make that announcement, but we were just chatting about everything going on in the world today. And what was amazing to me is the last thing he said to us when he hung up the phone is he said, "I love you guys." Pretty amazing.
Yeah. It is amazing. I mean, to get the CEO of the company on the phone with us within a couple of days of asking, and then to be on the phone and not have any pressure. I got 5 minutes, I got 10 minutes. We wanted to talk to him about some direction on, or some thoughts about where the world is going, and that was fun. But I think so many people today are so caught up in the fear of where the world is going, whether it's what the media is saying, or whether it's what their friends are saying, or whether it's because of the lockdowns. I think there's a lot of fear out there. And Frank said, I don't have time to watch the news. I'm too busy doing other things. And he's so focused on the things that he can have an impact on and the things that he can control. And he's so focused, and part of that, he's got other businesses, but the biggest part of that, and it's always been this way, the biggest part of that has been our Melaleuca business. And the fact that he was able to find this distribution center, or whatever it was, and buy it in the middle of all the stuff that's going on is amazing. The fact that he cares enough to make our business better by doing that is amazing. And he does love us. It's kind of corny, I guess, but when he gets up on stage at convention, or you see him on a Zoom now, it's supposed to be in place, a virtual convention, he says that kind of stuff. He means it. We've known him long enough. He really does mean it. And it's a special thing. Think about all the companies that you guys have been associated with, or worked for, or have had. I really doubt that. I mean, maybe you've had a great experience, and the person that owned that company, had put love into it. But I've never seen a company where a guy's run it and has put as much real love into it as Frank has.